Writing equations of lines from a table is very similar from writing equations of lines from 2 points, like we saw in a different video. In this one, you can use patterns, you can use slope-intercept form, or you can use point-slope form. So I'm going to show all three. For number 1 and 2, it says find the pattern and complete the table for each function. Go ahead and pause the video, try to come up with the pattern, and then we'll talk about it. Alright, for number 1, you'll notice that my x values are going up by 1. My y values are going up by 4. So the next y value would be 16 and then 20. For this table, if you just look at the patterns, you might be able to come up with the equation yourself. If you look at this, every x value is being multiplied by 4. So my equation for this would be y equals 4x. Sometimes you're going to be able to come up with the equation just by looking at the table and finding the pattern. For number 2, if you look at this, my x's are going up by 1s again, but my y's are going up by 2s. This one is not as easy to see because you're not just multiplying your x by something, you are also adding somewhere. So in this case, you are going to need to find your slope and you're going to need to find your y-intercept. Your slope is y over x, so I'm going up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. I am rising 2, I am running 1. I am rising 2, I am running 1. My slope here is 2 over 1, which I can just write as 2. Your y-intercept, we already know, happens when x is 0. So my y-intercept on this table, I can see because it's given to me right here. My y-intercept is 3. I can easily check this by plugging in my x values. 2 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 3 gives me 3. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 plus 3 gives me 5. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 plus 3 gives me 7. So it works for every x value. Now, if you don't like coming up with the pattern on your own or looking for the y-intercept, you can actually use the method we used for 2 points. So I'm going to show you both slope-intercept form and point-slope form. First, looking at number 1, I have my table, but I need my slope. You can pick any 2 points on your table to come up with your slope. On this one, I'm just going to pick the first 2. So I'm going to call this x1, y1, x2, and y2. I'm sorry, I did that completely wrong. It should be x1, y1, because that is the y column, then x2 and y2. Make sure you pay attention to your x column and your y column like I just messed up. So plugging this in to your slope formula, it's always y over x. I have 2 minus 1 over 6 minus 3, which means my slope here is 1/3. Now, if I am plugging this in to y equals mx plus b, then I can choose any point on my table. For this one, I'm just going to choose the first one, but any point will work. So my y is 1, my slope is 1/3, my x is 3, and I'm solving for b. Well, 1/3 times 3, those 3's cancel and leave me with 1. If I subtract 1 over, I get 0. So what I just found is that my answer is y equals 1/3 x plus 0, which you can just write as 1/3 x. I could check this because if I count my x's down to where x is 0, the next y value, since these are going down by 1s, would be 0. So I know that makes sense. The last method you could use is you could use point-slope form. And I'm going to use the same point here, the 3, 1. If I plug in 1 for y1 and 1/3 for m, and 3 for x1. Then I can distribute, and I get y minus 1 equals 1/3 x minus 1. My last step is to add the 1 over, and I end up with 1/3 x plus 0, which is the same thing as 1/3 x. You do not have to do all three methods, pattern, slope-intercept, and point-slope. Pick the method that works best for you. Looking at number 2. First, I'm going to find my slope. So again, I have my x1, y1, x2, and y2. Plugging this in, I have 14 minus 12 over 4 minus 3, which means my slope is 2 over 1, or 2. You can look for the pattern and try to find your y-intercept, or you can plug it into y equals mx plus b, or point slope. Again, I'm just going to choose this first point, and when I plug that in, I have 12 equals 2 times 3 plus b. So 12 is 6 plus b, and when I subtract that, my b is 6. Plugging those two things in, my answer, my equation, is y equals 2x plus 6. If you prefer point slope form, again, you can plug that in to point slope. I'm going to use the first point, but again, you can choose any of the points. So y minus 12 equals 2 times x minus 3. 2 times x is 2x. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. And when I add this over, I get y equals 2x plus 6. I get the same answer. Go ahead and pause the video, try 3 and 4, and then restart when you're ready to check. Alright, for number 3, first I'm going to find my slope. And again, you can choose any 2 points. I would try to avoid negatives as much as possible if you can, but if not, it might not always happen. So for this one, you could choose your last 2 points, but since they're all pretty much negative, I'm just going to stick with the first 2. I have x1, y1, x2, and y2. When I plug this in, I have negative 3 minus negative 4 over 4 minus 2. Be careful with your signs. Negative 3 minus negative 4 is the same thing as negative 3 plus 4, making this 1/2. Be careful. Your y-intercept is not 10, 0. That would be your x-intercept. Remember, your y-intercept happens when x is 0, not when y is 0. Plugging this into y equals mx plus b, I'm actually going to choose this last point because it doesn't have any negatives. So 0 equals 1/2 times 10 plus b. Don't let that fraction mess you up. Half of 10 is just 5. Now when I get 5 or b by itself, I subtract the 5, and my b is negative 5. Plugging this into point slope, I'm going to use the same point. So y minus 0 equals 1/2 times x minus 10. 1/2 times x is 1/2 x. 1/2 times negative 10 is negative 5. And adding 0 over is not going to change anything. So either method that I use, I get 1/2 x minus 5. Last one, on number 4. I have my x1, my y1, my x2, and my y2. Plugging this in, I have 2 minus 4 over 2 minus 1. 2 minus 4 is negative 2. 2 minus 1 is 1, meaning that my slope is negative 2. I'm going to use the first point. So plugging this into y equals mx plus b, I have 4 equals negative 2 times 1 plus b, meaning 4 is negative 2 plus b. To get b by itself, I add the 2 over, and b is 6. b is 6 is not my final answer, though. My final answer is plugging in the slope of negative 2 and the b of 6. If you prefer point slope form, then plugging it in here, I have y minus 4 equals negative 2 times x minus 1. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. And if I add 4 over, I get y equals negative 2x plus 6. Remember, you can choose the method that works best for you. Whether you like to just look for the pattern, use y equals mx plus b, or use point slope. As long as you double check your answer and be careful with your signs, you should always end up with the same equation.